my queen, my queen. Oh, beautiful, wonderfully made. She's heaven's angel, so strong, even in struggle, yeah. When life comes like a storm from every angle, she rises above it all, the backbone of every home. Nothing compares to all she do. The true meaning of every family. She's the glue. Hey. Where would we be without you? You brought us Martin, Malcolm, and Obama, yeah, and Jesus too. Oh, she's sophisticated, strong, simply amazing, humble, honest, and helpful, educated, ebony, eccentric, empowering. She's a queen, she's a queen. You better treat her like a queen.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk with Bishop R.C. Blakes. R.C. is an author, empowerment teacher, and the proud pastor of the New Home Ministries of New Orleans, Louisiana and Houston, Texas. His message circles the globe. His conversational and candid approach to challenging content makes him a relevant voice to all generations. Get ready for a life-changing transformational conversation.
Hello. This is R.C. Blakes, and welcome back. Please take your time and invite others to come in and to be a part of this conversation today. We have a great one. Please like and share and do all of the things that you know will make this message go further and reach more people. But we have a great one today, something that I've never talked about, and that's saying a lot, because I've talked about a lot, I've really talked about a lot. But today I want to talk about at least 8 ways mama might have messed you up as a woman. At least 8 ways. 8 ways. That your mother may have unintentionally messed you up as a woman. 8 ways mothers mislead daughters in life and relationships. That would be the subtitle. I often talk about the father wound. But what is equally as detrimental, just probably not as prevalent, is a thing called the mother wound. Now, a father wound is generally the absence of a father. In a lot of cases, physically absent, financially absent, emotionally absent. But the mother wound, and I'm no mental health professional, I must say this again, the mother wound is unique in that it happens largely with the mother being physically present. For a lot of us, especially in the African American community, in the Black community in America, the father wound is typified in the father physically being absent in most cases. Well, the mother wound happens mostly with the mother being present. And it's not always that, in the father wound, the father is physically absent, emotionally disconnected. Well, in a lot of cases with the mother wound, um, it's not that she's even emotionally disconnected. And I'm just thinking about this as I'm fleshing it out with you. It's not even that she's emotionally detached. Like fathers have this mindset about daughters that, well, I don't need to give much attention to her because all I need to do is provide for her and protect her if somebody tries to come in the house or, something like that. Well, we're conditioned for that. So we never have a mind to connect emotionally. But a lot of times, mothers who actually wound their daughters, I'm talking about daughters specifically here, because I think it's another conversation when we think about mother wounds and sons. But when we think of mothers negatively impacting daughters, mothers are physically present and are emotionally connected. Here's the big problem. Here's the massive problem. Because mothers, in a lot of instances, have not dealt with the trauma from their own childhoods, their own experiences, what they call being connected and mothering their daughters is quite often unconsciously toxic. So she's physically present, she's actually emotionally connected, but she's connecting her daughter to all of the dysfunction, all of the toxicity that she never put to bed in her generation. So it's not that she's depriving the child, it's not that she's depriving her daughter necessarily, but it is that she is misleading, misguiding. She's debilitating her daughter by, indoctrinating her daughter based on the information of her own trauma. In other words, she's taken her dysfunction and she's packaged it as her daughter's norm. I mean, I'm just really putting this together as I'm talking to you. But there's a point in all of our development where we must listen to this very carefully. Listen to this very carefully. There's a point in your development. There was a point in my development. There will be a point in my children's development. There's a point in all of our development where we must parent the unparented child within us. In other words, if mother never showed up, if she was absent, and maybe this is where your issues come from, there's a point even in that person's life, even if it's the father wound, where you have to rise up as an adult and parent the unparented child in you, love the unloved child in you, instruct the uninstructed child in you. And then there's a point where we must reparent the parts that our parents got wrong. Because watch this, no parent is perfect. All of us get it wrong on certain points. And even when my kids come to adulthood, as they came into adulthood, I've watched how they were able to correct certain things that I was adamant about in that season of my life, but I've evolved and I've grown enough to understand better now. And I've watched how the adult, my adult children went back and reparented that area of their lives, especially from the oldest one down, as I was a teenage father at 15. So, I made 1,000,001 mistakes, right? And so the oldest one is 43, The youngest one is 22. And so between 43 and 22, I became a better parent. But there are things that the older kids had to go back and reparent. And I, thankfully, try my best to assist in that endeavor by acknowledging areas where I did get it wrong, acknowledging my faults and my flaws, helping them to process and what have you. But say you don't have a parent that is that conscious or is even alive or present to assist you, you still have the responsibility of parenting the unparented part of you and reparenting the part of you that was parented improperly. And so when it comes down to women and their mothers, this is very important because the way women are built for women, let me not say it that way. Women are built with a greater relationship consciousness than men. Women are built for a greater relationship consciousness than men. So for women, in a lot of cases, probably in most cases, women desire relationships with men. Most women desire a relationship with a man. And here's the thing that we rarely, if ever, talk about. Your philosophies, your habits, your mindset relative to the opposite sex and relative to relationship was largely deposited within you by either the direct indoctrinations of your mothers or by the observation of your mothers. And so I want you to just kind of sit with this today as we unpack it. And I want you to locate those areas where maybe you weren't parented at all. And then I need you to look at those areas where maybe you were parented wrong. And now as an adult woman, I need you to take ownership for these areas. Stop waiting for mom to come and say I was wrong, or for mom to say I'm sorry. Maybe mom actually still believes she was right. But if you go to Titus chapter 2, verses 3 through 5, it reads like this: older women similarly are to be reverent in their behavior. This is the Amplified Version. Not malicious gossips, nor addicted to much wine, teaching what is right and good, so that they may encourage the young women to tenderly love their husbands and their children, to be sensible, pure, makers of a home where God is honored, good-natured, being subject to their own husbands, so that the word of God will not be dishonored. But notice here, and you read the full context, it's encouraging older men to be examples to the younger men, like I'm trying to do now for a younger generation of men, because men do watch this platform. This platform is 90% female, but I think we're at 10. I think it peaked up to 11 recently, which is a lot. And so a lot of men watch this content to hear what I have to say relative to women, because there's a generation of men who are trying to get it right, even young men who are trying to get it right. But like I'm trying to be an example to the young men and even to the young women, the Bible gives the specific responsibility of mentoring the younger women to the older women. And when you read it in the King James Version, it talks about the older women ought to behave reverently so as to teach young women. And what is that saying to us? The younger generation learns more from what we do than they do from what we say. And so while mothers may have a lot to say, they may, be very verbose in certain subject matter, the young girl learns more from the way mother lives. And my father put it this way: more is caught through observation than is taught through indoctrination. In other words, I learned more from watching my father than I ever learned from him telling me, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. You know what I'm saying? Because observation is a more profound and deeper instructor than words. Anybody can speak words, but every generation of young people knows that the truth comes out in the way you live your life. And so even when you're living your life in an improper direction, we at least know this is your present truth. And so young people are more impacted by what mama did than they are by what mama said, because mama would say, and this is not to be disrespectful, but it's very true. Mama would say, don't lay down and have no babies by a man you're not married with. And at the same time, daughter is the product of an affair. Well, the thing mama missed, mama wasn't wrong, but the thing mama missed that failed to compute for daughter is that she didn't lay it out that the reason I'm telling you this is because I've made this mistake, this mistake, this mistake, this mistake, and that mistake. Because we grew up, my generation on back at least, we grew up with this do as I say, not as I do kind of mentality. So we never really felt like we were responsible to let you know where we got it wrong. So we came off as what? Hypocrites. Because we're telling you to do something that we clearly did not do. So we fell short. We were not wrong. We were just incomplete. We should have started that by saying, now, see how mama's life turned out? I did this and I did that and I did that and I did that. And I'm seeing you following the same thing. So I don't want you to do this and that because I don't want you to follow in the same line. You can't start out with, don't lay down with no man you're not married to when mama has 2 or 3 kids by men she wasn't married to. And so daughter says, oh man, forget about what she says. And she hones in on mother's behavior. And that's what we have today. We have a generation of women that are just repeats of a previous generation. And when you repeat when you repeat the pros and the cons of a previous generation, it's always exacerbated. It's always multiplied. It's always, fertilized. The next generation always takes it to the next level. And so, number one, I have 8 points, and my time is running quickly, that I need to get through today. Number one, 8 ways mama might have messed you up, sis. Number one, she modeled, and if it doesn't apply to you, it doesn't apply to you. She modeled disrespect for your father. She modeled disrespect for your father. And quite honestly, though I'm talking about how mama messed you up, at this point, dad is actually more responsible, because daddy allowed mama to disrespect you or disrespect him in your presence, or even out of your presence. Daddy was, he's culpable as well, because he allowed your mother to paint a false dynamic of what husbands and wives look like, what manhood and womanhood looks like. But mama modeled disrespect for your father, who in this instance, for whatever reason, showed up as a weak man. You see, a young girl formulates how she must interact with men based on the relationship between her mother and her father. And this sends the general message that men are either to be respected or disrespected. Men are to be held to a standard where they're held accountable, and when they show up properly, Give them respect when they show up improperly. If you ever get to a point that you feel like you got to disrespect a man, don't disrespect him, just distance yourself. We learn this from the interactions between mothers and fathers. I learned how to be gentle, and I learned how to be a provider from my father. When I say gentle, I mean I learned how to take off, the hard exterior, the hard tone, the impatience that I as a man and we as men usually have with one another. And I learned from the way my father lived with my mother, I learned how to slow down and be patient with my wife and be tolerant and to be gentle with my wife, to be cautious with my wife. I learned that through observing my father. And can I just keep it real? I learned that, and everybody knows how much I love my mother, but I learned that watching my mother at times do things and sometimes say things that even as a young boy, I felt like, dad should have been impatient or could have been impatient with and would have been justified. But rather than being impatient and rather than being emotional and rather than flipping out, he slowed down and he talked to her. If she was disrespectful, if he felt like she was going in that direction, he would say to her, "Now, Lois, we're not going to do it like that. No, we're not going to, we don't talk to one another like that, Lois." And my mom, I watched my mom respect his leadership as a man as he led with love. I watched my mom calm down and speak to my father properly. But I first watched my father deal with my mother properly. I learned that through observation. Well, just like I learned that through observation, much of the stuff I teach you, I learned this stuff through observation and then, trial and error, of course. But just like I learned that through observation, you learned a lot of how you deal with men, good or bad, based on the observation of how your mom dealt with your father. When your mom disrespected your father, it sent the general message to you as a young girl that men are to be disrespected. And so when mom disrespected your father, the man you even subconsciously viewed as your hero, even if you didn't realize it, not only did it send the general message that men are to be disrespected, it also made a strong man unattractive and controlling, because men are to be subject according to the relational model of many women, specifically the way your mama lived. So when a man says to you, "No, we're not going to talk like that. We're not going to do it like that," you say, "Oh, you're not going to control me." Because mama gave you a model that says, I can say whatever I want, any kind of way I want it. I want to say it. I can disrespect this man, and a man is just going to take it. And then you grow up and you get into the real world and you figure out that real men don't take it. And the ones that do take it don't hold your interest very long. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33, Amplified reads like this: "However, each man among you, without exception, is to love his wife as his very own self, with behavior worthy of respect and esteem, always seeking the best for her with an attitude of loving kindness. And the wife must see to it that she respects and delights in her husband, that she notices him and prefers him and treats him with loving concern, treasuring him, honoring him, and holding him dear." Now, when you think about how many mothers disrespected the fathers in front of the girl, this is problematic because her mindset, the girl's mindset, because of what she's observed, seeks to dominate a man and to reject any man that won't submit. In the meantime, her feminine spirit is unhappy with the men she attracts because her conditioning has made her needs and desires around men incongruent. You observe this and you learn from mom's example that women dominate men. So you grow up with this idea that I'm gonna tell a man what to do. I'm gonna tell a man where to get off, and I'm gonna be difficult, and I'm gonna be loud, and so you have this desire for relationship, and so you show up in the world with mom's type energy, and you only attract weak men. And then you discover after you attract these men that you're not attracted to these men. And the men you're attracted to are not attracted to you. And you say, well, it's because of my size, it's because of my age, it's because of, my skin color, my race. And the reality is, it's because strong men are not going to tolerate disrespectful women. And you got all of this from what? Maternal conditioning. Number two, I'm taking too much time here. She conditioned you, mama might have messed you up. Number two, she conditioned you to believe and behave as a voiceless shell of a woman. So we go from one extreme to the other. We have the mother that disrespects dad, pops off, says whatever she wants, puts her hands on him, rolls her neck, and all of this kind of thing. And now we got the other woman on the other end of the extreme she was just a doormat for every man the young girl observed her to have in her life. Many times the mothers that raised the little girls were so broken, were so victimized, and were so unsupported by society that they lost their personal vision. They lost their sense of purpose. They lost their passion. They lost their sense of value, and they lost their voices. So because mama was functioning out of survival mode, she tolerated a lot of stuff from men in her life that she should not have tolerated. And as a little girl, you witnessed that. There's something that I recently was turned on to by one of my spiritual daughters who's a therapist, and it's this thing called a genogram. Google it. And what a genogram does for you is a genogram allows you to go back to as far as you can go, grandparents, great grandparents, and you pencil in idiosyncrasies and behaviors and flaws in every one of them. I guess pros and cons. And you just you work your way down until you get to you. And then it's amazing how you see the previous generations showing up in your present day behavior. Many times the mothers were so broken that they, were functioning out of survival. So they communicated powerlessness or powerless femininity to the daughter. In other words, you're a woman, so you're a victim. That's what society wants you to believe. You're a woman, so you are a victim. You just got to take it, and you don't have no choice in the matter. And when mama was so broken that she tolerated a lot of stuff, she became a doormat. She lost her voice. She communicates to you, women don't say nothing. Women must be quiet. Women cannot speak up for themselves. Though the daughter's circumstances, watch this, are different than her mother's, the daughter's worldview is the same. Now watch this. Mom was uneducated. She didn't have a support system. Society was against her. She didn't have access to as much knowledge and wisdom as women have today to build her up. She had none of that. Here you're educated, you're financially independent, you have access to voices and people and literature that will build you up and help you to gain a balanced femininity. But because your worldview is the same, your circumstances are immensely better, your worldview is the same, so you still get the same outcomes. because you can't change a person's life by altering the exterior. A person's life is only changed when the mindset shifts. See, your worldview is the same. It's a mindset. You still believe I can't, even though you have. You still believe, I shouldn't. I'm a woman, I shouldn't. Or you just have this looping idea in your head, I'm just a woman. Who am I? You know what I'm saying? You're a woman. You said a lot when you said that. And when you say I'm a woman, you're saying that you are the creation of the Almighty God put in the earth to bring forth multiplication. And God, the command to be fruitful and multiply could not happen without the woman. Nothing is fruitful or multiplies without the woman. So you say a lot when you say I'm just a woman. Listen to what Numbers 13:33 says. There we saw, and read the full context in your leisure. It says, there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, are part of the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. Now, when you read the context, you'll see that God called them kings, basically. In other terms, God's calling the children of Israel kings, and he's saying, go into this promised land and see what I've provided for you. All I need you to do is go and take it. They get over there and they see these giants, and they say, oh, we look like grasshoppers in their sight. And so because they saw themselves that way, their worldview was that their perspective was that the world saw them the same way they saw themselves. We will never approach the world beyond the level we see ourselves, because mindset is transferable even to a generation in dominion, and you are a generation in dominion. If the mindset doesn't shift, the behavior will remain the same to oncoming generations. Therefore, the outcomes will be the same from generation to generation to generation. And for a lot of you, you inherited an inferior mindset. You have been conditioned to believe and behave with a voiceless self-perspective. And so you've lost your voice because mama taught you that. If you look in 1 Kings 15, 1 through 3, it's a powerful text here. It says, now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, reigned Abijam over Judah. 3 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom. And he walked in all the sins of his father, which he had done before him. And his heart was not perfect with the Lord, his God, as the heart of David, his father. He walked in all of the sins of his father that were done before him. We learn, women, should I say, learn how to be strong, queen conscious, or, voiceless, many times to the greatest degree, based on the example, the maternal example you've had modeled before you. Mama might have messed you up. Now, number 3, she put a demand on you. Oh, this one is good right here. Mom put a demand on you to be tough for the world you would face. So in a lot of cases, mom really did not have, and let's just be fair to mom, mom just did not have the time to nurture your femininity because mom was in survival mode. Her mindset was to prepare you for survival. And so she put a demand on you to be tough for the world that she knew you would face. When a woman has been disappointed by her generation of men and the generation that came before her, and she's been forced to exercise masculine energy to survive, quite often she teaches her daughter to be hard. She may even handle her daughter harshly to prepare her daughter for a difficult world. Now, The daughter may view this as being unloving, especially when the daughter sees that maybe there's a brother in this single parented home of a mother that mom coddles. And with the daughter, mom seems to be tough and hard. And the daughter reads into that mom doesn't love me, she loves my brother, not realizing that mom is really just trying to prepare you for a world that she believes is just going to offer you nothing but pain and problems. And so when this happens, this established your mindset towards masculine energy as your default. I don't know why. I can't seem to turn this masculine energy off. Well, in a lot of cases, you can't turn it off because mama taught you directly or indirectly that you must never turn it off. So even when you get to a safe place with a safe man, with a godly man, with a loving man, with a gentle man, you can't even enjoy that because mom has established your default. You must never turn your masculine energy off because this world will offer you nothing but pain and problems. And so this makes it uncomfortable to trust. And this makes it uncomfortable for you as a woman to relax. This makes the woman not comfortable with needing a man. So you can't even admit that you, or let's change that. You can't even admit that you desire a man. Or maybe you have situations where in your life where maybe it's not, when we say need a man, maybe we're not talking about you need a man in your life in a relationship. Maybe there's something you need fixed. Rather than calling a man that you know can fix it, rather than admitting you need a man, you'll Google for the next hour and a half, 2 hours to figure out how to do it by yourself. Because mama taught you that you got to be tough. You can never demonstrate any sense of vulnerability. You can never be, you got to always have the answers. You got to always be strong. You must never fall back into the relaxation of your femininity because the world is going to offer you nothing but pain and problems. Listen to what 1 Peter 3:7 says. In the same way, you husbands live with your wives in an understanding way. This is the amplified version of what I think we just read a minute ago. With great gentleness and tact, and with an intelligent regard for the marriage relationship, as with someone physically weaker, since she is a woman. Show her honor and respect as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered or ineffective. Now look what 1 Peter 3:5-6 in the King James Version says. For after this manner in the old time, the holy women also who trusted in God adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. Now, don't get triggered by the language. Nobody's trying to get you to walk around, call no man Lord. And this is not about, the thing you have to understand here is that this is not about any hierarchy. This is not about the man ruling over the woman, the man being more important than the woman. What this is about is masculine energy, feminine energy, masculine attributes, feminine attributes. There comes a time when a woman has to be healthy enough to relax in her feminine and submit to the fact that God has put men in her way to help her. But when you've been raised in an environment where a woman has seen everything but helpful men, and granted, I know you're already typing it. Granted, I already know the world has offered us too many examples of men that do not help, but rather hinder. But certainly we are not going to improve our attraction to good, great, and healthy men by buying into the idea that I gotta be tough and I gotta fulfill the role of the man. No, 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 no. It's a blessing that you have the ability to shift into masculine energy, to get certain things done, to defend yourself when you need to make it happen when you need to make it happen. But when you don't need to make it happen, you got to learn to just submit to masculine energy and say, okay, hey, we got a man here. My wife can carry whatever she brings from the store. She brought it from the store. She can carry it in the house. But if I'm home, she sends me out there to get it. Because when you got masculine energy, you got to learn to submit to that and let masculine energy do its thing. Come on now. My wife can go earn and pay a whole lot of bills, but she submits to the fact that I'm a man that has a mindset to provide. She submits to that. So when you start hearing this term submission, I want you to think about it from the perspective of masculine energy, feminine energy. Feminine learns to submit to the strength of masculine. Why strain to do stuff that God's given you men to do easily? And when I say men, I'm not even talking about folk you're married to or in relationship with or romantic with. Men on the job, men in the neighborhood, men at the church. You know what I'm saying? Don't get offended. I remember one time I was flying and I reached to pick this lady's bag up because it was just my habit, but women kind of broke me out of it. I reached to pick this woman's bag up and put it overhead because that was just the way, that's just my thing. I want to help women when I can. I don't reach and pick up no dude's bag unless he's an older man. I'll reach and do it, but generally I like to, help women. This lady got offended. Read me from the top to the bottom because I can pick my own bag up. I said, okay, I got you. And I ran into that a few times and it trained me to just be slow about reaching for a woman's bag. Because a lot of times a man means well, because it's our nature when we're healthy to do whatever we can to help women. But when you run into a broken generation of women, you get offended at a man that wants to help. Oh, praise the Lord. Number 4. I got to hurry up through this because I got 8 points. Number 4. She coddled your brothers while she was tough on you. She coddled your brother or your brothers. And this further cemented your concept of men. This skewed your impression of men, that men are subconsciously, this was planted in your soul, men are to be kept. While your mother was hard on you, toughening you up, she was softening your brother up. She feminized your brother while she masculinized you. And this happens generally in homes where it's a single mother. The father's nowhere to be found to help raise the boy. So mom feels bad about the boy not having a father role in his life. So she overcompensates by babying him. She's fearful that you're going to have the same kind of life she had. So she toughens up on you while she loosens up on him. And this cements in your mind that, without you even realizing it, that men are to be coddled. And so this is why you have a grown man in your house that doesn't have a job and you take care of him. All right, number 6, I got to hurry. She infused you with a hatred for your father. Now, this usually happens when, again, a husband and a wife are either never married and, they create a child, or man and a woman are never married, create a child, or man and a woman were married and get divorced. And then mama, not knowing how to process all of her emotions around the breakup, develops this what seems to be a hatred for your father. And rather than processing that like a healthy adult, she poured that poison into your soul as his daughter. So it was like the world destroying Wonder Woman, or destroying Superman. Better example. Like the world turning Superman into a villain. Your mother took the man that was supposed to be your hero and turned him into a villain rather than allowing you in your formative years to have the experience of viewing your father as Superman and the greatest man in the world, and allowing you through age to come to a point to understand the flaws of your father on your own terms. She just kind of infused you with a hatred for your father that was premature. You were not even developed enough to hear some of the things that mom told you about your dad. And here's the hardest truth in that scenario. A lot of times, a lot of things mom told you, you have to always remember there are two sides to a story. And sometimes mom lied. Mom didn't always tell you the truth. And you believed everything mom said relative to your dad. Now, in a lot of cases, moms tell the exact, total, whole, nothing but the truth. But this robbed you of the impartation that only your father could provide. See, if just because he was a horrible man or boyfriend or husband does not mean he had to be a horrible father. And see, she vilified him because maybe he didn't show up financially. And that was stuff that she probably needed to deal with, in the courts, not with you. All you needed in your mind as a child was for your father to be present and to have the opportunity to think, to believe that your father was the greatest man in the world. That's all you needed for your development. Once you got older and you were able to process life, you would have been able to look and say, okay, Dad, things ain't really adding up here. And you would have been able to have your conversations, but to have been robbed of the impartation of a father, even if he was sorely lacking in his relational skills or didn't show up financially, if your father could have remained in your mind a hero, imagine what it would have done for your self-esteem. Yeah. The voice you lost, you would probably have it had your mom not made you or infused you with hatred for your father. It also gave you an anger for the first man you should have been able to innocently love. This is where you develop your rhythm as a woman of loving relationships. Your relationship with your father teaches you what authentic, safe love looks like. But when you're robbed of that, now what happens is mom infused you with all of this anger and all of this hatred. And so now, because you've not gotten the impartation of a present father, not to say dads were always there. Sometimes they just, mom had nothing to do with it. They just did not show up. But even sometimes when they did show up, the stuff mom many times poured into your heart wouldn't allow you to really receive him without a whole lot of drama going on in your mind. Well, let me read this. In Proverbs 22, 24, and 25, it says, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways, get a snare to your soul. You learned the anger your mom had for your father. Your mom was angry because he failed as a man, as a husband, you see. And so she took that anger and infused you with that anger. And as a consequence, you never really were able to give him a chance to be a father. Just because a man fails as a husband doesn't mean he'll fail as a father. A lot of great fathers fail as husbands. Now, number 6, her poor relationship with money has become your norm. When you look at the way you handle your money, when you look at your love for materialism, consumerism, you got that from your mom. And if there's anything women cannot afford to do today, women cannot afford to be frivolous with money. Maybe frugal, but not frivolous. Many women have learned to disrespect money and to value things without value from their mothers. Proverbs 22, 6 and 7, train up a child in the way he should go, teaching him to seek God's wisdom and will for his abilities and talents. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Look what verse 7 says. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Interesting how these two verses collide in Proverbs. Train up a child in the way he should go. You know, the rich rules over the poor. Every woman, you got, if mom didn't teach you about money, you got to reparent yourself in that area. You cannot be a woman out here talking about you earning 6 figures and spending 7. Credit cards. You can't be that woman. You just can't be that woman. You have to be responsible with money. Okay, mama might have messed you up. Number 7, her overly critical attitude towards you created an inferiority complex. Mothers tend to be overly critical of their daughters because sometimes mothers attempt to reach levels of perfection in their daughters vicariously. Not realizing it, they create a toxic tension of abusive ridicule. She thinks that she's giving you tough love and sharpening you to be your very best, when the reality is she's ridiculing you and breaking your spirit. Proverbs 12:18 says, there is one who speaks rashly like the thrust of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Many times mothers are overly critical with daughters, and some of you have dealt with that, where your mother just kind of went through you like a hot knife through butter, and not understanding that her words were injuring you. Well, you got to understand that, you can't, number one, you can't just take and generalize and say, well, because mom said this, because she doesn't love me, she doesn't like me. No. Sometimes she's doing that because that's the way her generation did it. You have to understand every generation gets more and more enlightened. And when you stop and really look at this with mature eyes, a lot of times you say, mom really was she really was aiming to improve me. Though she was hurting me, her intention was to improve me. And so rather than judging her for that, you sit and you understand her intent. And you take and you reparent yourself in this season, and you do what's necessary to make certain that you're healthy, and don't repeat that behavior with your own daughter, with your own children in general. And then number 8, finally, her competition with you for your father's affection introduced you to toxic sisterhood. This is something we don't talk about, how mothers compete with the daughters for the affection and the attention of their husband, the daughter's father, and how husbands compete with sons for the admiration of the wife that the wife has for her son, their son. That's a real deal. I remember, man, I was a child when I was a child. I guess I was a child in my mind. When kids were young, Trey was young, man, it was interesting to be having mixed emotions about little people that flesh of your flesh, bone of your bone, but consuming all of your wife's time. And I found myself around there competing for my wife's attention and my wife's affection. Forgetting about the fact that these are babies. These people need their mother. I ain't got no breast to feed nobody. I don't know how to nurture like that. These little people need their mama. But I was taking it personally. And so I'm around there mad with them and loving them all at the same time. Well, that same thing happens with mothers, with wives and their daughters. Husband gives daughter the kind of admiration and attention that wife always wanted. And so mom finds herself competing with her own daughter for the attention of her husband, the daughter's father. And there's this clash and this tension that daughter doesn't understand. Sometimes daddy doesn't understand. Sometimes daddy ain't paying attention to it. But daughter gets the backlash of, it's not that mom doesn't love, it's just a psychological thing. That because in a lot of cultures, we don't talk about these things. These things are happening and they're not addressed. And if a situation is not addressed, it'll be repeated constantly. And it'll become a family's norm, though it's dysfunctional. But her competition with you for your father's affection and her husband was your introduction to the toxic sisterhood. And so now there's an energy of competition among women that feels natural to you, feels normal to you. It's not. So now let me say this as I shut this down. I'm done. If you find that some of this stuff relates to you, please don't allow yourself to become angry with your mother, because we can only do our best. We can only give what we have. We only know what we know. And so all of us can be judged as parents. You know what I'm saying? I mean, again, there are a lot of mistakes I made as a parent that my children have challenged me on, because that's the culture I'm trying to cultivate. It's not always comfortable to give your children, free will to just kind of tell you about yourself, where you missed it, where you messed up. All of us can be judged. This is not for you to get angry with your mother. This is for you to understand where certain things come from that are in you, that were deposited in you by your mother, And maybe none of this relates to you. Maybe you just had the ideal, awesome. And sometimes that's the case. But this will at least help you to understand maybe some of your friends. And if nothing, it will definitely help you to understand some of the things you should and shouldn't do relative to your own daughters. Now, may I pray for you? Father, I thank you for every person that's under the sound of my voice today. Every heart that's hurting, every heart that's broken. Father, would you touch them now? And take everything that I've said, God, and just pour a healing balm into their souls and give them peace that passes all understanding and joy that's unspeakable. Will you do that, Father, by the Holy Spirit? In Jesus' name, amen. Don't forget to go to the website, rcblakes.com. Sign up for the mailing list. Check out all of the online programs while you are there. If you need counseling, there's a link in the description, BetterHelp Counseling. If you use that link, they will give you 10% off of the cost of your counseling. And because I referred them to you, they will make a deposit into R.C. Blake's Ministries. Amazon to get all of my books. And I think we have just a few more at my store, rcblakesstore.com, of my latest book, Me, My, Mine. I'm going to have to announce, I think the date. We're going to have the official release date of that book with all of its other, additions, the audio, the ebook, in February. Interesting. There's a paper shortage, and the printer of our books is backed up on all of my other books. And so there's a massive back order that the printer has to get out, which is preventing me from just launching the new book in mass on Amazon and everywhere. It's a great problem, but I want you to understand why I've not pulled the trigger on launching the book fully. I've only had the 1,000 copies from my own store. It's because there's a paper shortage, and he's not getting paper as quickly. And so there's a backlog on my other books. And so once we get through this, then he'll be able to print Me, My Mind by the thousands, and I'll be able to release it to the general public. So it looks like it's going to be somewhere in February of 2023. If you're watching this at a later date, I will announce it, and you know exactly when you can get it on Amazon and get all of the other versions of it. Thanks to all of you who sow into our lives. Lisa and I love you with all of our hearts, and we thank God for you. Well, I'm done. You're on top. You're going higher. God has more in store for you, so we will see you at the top. God bless you. Until next time.
We here at R.C. Blake's Ministries want to thank you for spending this time with us today. R.C. and Lisa are always honored to have you with us. Don't forget to reach out to us by visiting our website at www.rcblakes.com. While you're there, you may join our mailing list and receive a free download of The Laws of Manifesting Your Vision by R.C. Blakes. Also look at all of the online programs by R.C. You may find all books written by R.C. and Lisa. Once again, all of us here at R.C. Blake's Ministries want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And as we always say, see you at the top.